welcome back to Serious About Rugby League's podcast. In the past we've done lots of different sort of combinations of the greatest players, and we've even done a greatest ever 13, but we're going to try and do a greatest ever overseas 13. So these are the players that obviously don't come from within the UK but have made a massive impact in Super League. There is some discussion as to whether French players are allowed, but we'll get down to that once we get to certain players. So we'll start at number 1, just like we did in our greatest 13. And some of the great overseas players that we've had in the past, Brett Hodgson, Green Shields, Brent Webb. I'll come over to you, Jack. Jack, who do you think should make number 1 for this All-Star team?
Well, you mentioned some cracking names. I mean, I think Brett Hodgson's one of the more obvious ones. Obviously, had cracking spells with Huddersfield and Warrington, and led the team, really. But for me, it's got to be Brent Webb. I might be a little bit biased being a Leeds fan, but I remember when Leeds signed Webb, it was on the back of, I think it was either a Tri-Nations or a World Cup campaign where he'd just been featuring for New Zealand, and he'd absolutely set the competition alight. He really had. I think he'd scored a couple of full-length tries, and he was the man that everyone was talking about, especially in England, given the fact that he'd already signed with Leeds at that point. Everyone was thinking, oh, Leeds have got this Kiwi full-back that's going to come in and blitz the competition and just be a real strike weapon for Leeds, and he was he was in his first few seasons. I think the back end of his Leeds career was blighted by injury, and he never really sort of hit the same form. But when he first came in, he was an absolutely superb player. I think I know the Leeds fans had the song "Brent Webb is Superman," literally just because of some of the runs he'd go on, and his support play was absolutely sublime. So for me, Brent Webb is that number 1.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Brent Webb was a fantastic player. I know from the flip point of view, we would have to have gone watching against Brent Webb. You would be a bit scared.
Terrified when he used to come to Wigan with Leeds. Yeah, I was looking at this. Like Luke Dawn was another one. Definitely would be right up there. I think he's a top point scorer for the Harlequins. Obviously the London club now, but I mean, you just look at any video of Brent Webb scoring tries, and he has to be our number 1 for me.
I think there's a lot of Australians that have come over, not just Australians, there's a lot of overseas players that have come over and made massive impacts in the first season. So you look at Brent Webb, you look at Ben Barber last season, you look at Lachlan Coote this year. So it's happened for a number of years, but whether those players will be able to go and do it for an extended period of time like Brent Webb is a question. I actually had Brett Hodgson. I think Brett Hodgson was fantastic, firstly for Huddersfield, and obviously got into the Super League Dream Team for Huddersfield.
Man of Steel,
and then moved into a Warrington team that, again, obviously they couldn't quite get over the line for the Super League, but won some cups with Warrington and did a fantastic job for the Warrington club moving forward. So I had Brett Hodgson as my pick. I'll throw that out there, but I will admit defeat, and it looks like we're going with Brent Webb.
For me, it's just the pure excitement factor. I think he was always a player that everyone wanted to watch and get excited about when they watched him. So. And that's the only reason he's just pipped Hodgson. I think Hodgson, like you said, is a very worthy contender. But yeah, I think Brent.
He was playing in a cracking team as well. At least to be fair, they were really good to watch back then.
It is hard not to pick Leeds players just based on that team.
Yeah,
definitely. We'll move on to the wings, and there's a player that's obviously already been mentioned in the greatest 13, so it would be almost impossible for us to leave him out. The overseas 13, and obviously that's Leslie Vanacolo. So as I said, if you want to listen to our comments on Leslie Vanacolo, you could probably go and watch the other video on the greatest 13. We need to speak about him quite a bit. He's one of obviously the outstanding wingers of all time, not just in the Super League but in the NRL as well. But the other position, however, is a bit of a toss up, because there are a few really, really good players. I'm going to come to you, Paul. Who do you think gets the other position?
Well, I mean, I'm a Wigan fan, so you could call me biased, but I went for Pat Richards. I think he come to Wigan, it was at the 2005 season when Wigan really struggled, and I think he really struggled that year. I think we said before when we were doing the Super League 13, I think he probably at that time he was probably only in the side for his kicking, but obviously Brian Noble took over, and over the years the team started to improve. And obviously the 2010 team, which for me, watching Wigan since the early 2000s, is the best team they've had since then. I think he was man of steel that year, wasn't he? He kicked a record number of points, scoring tries for fun. An absolute, a legend of the Wigan club, and on and off the field, a total credit to the game. I mean, you've got some tremendous names there and really exciting players to watch. But for me, I'd have to put Pat Richards in there.
Yeah, as you said, there's some fantastic names. You've got Viacona at Bradford as well. Scott Donald, who we were having a big conversation about, obviously scored some wonderful tries for Leeds. Francis Melly for St Helens was a great player. But I would have to agree with you. I think Pat Richards, not just for the fact that he obviously was a special player just in the air and scoring tries, but his importance to Wigan, both with his kicking game, infield, with obviously important drop goals like the one against Bradford in 2007, and then his kicking from the tee as well, which obviously helped him win the Man of Steel award in 2010 and obviously helped Wigan win the Super League.
There was that drop goal from the halfway line as well against St Helens, didn't it? They
I
lost
was
that
gonna
game.
mention that,
They lost that game.
Yeah, lost by a point, didn't they?
But just when you see what's around on YouTube, it's out of this world.
One of them where it's last tackle player, don't know where to go.
Yeah,
Get to Richards, or what are you
yeah.
going to do? Or just slot 1 point.
Well, I think the two big toss-ups for me, obviously we have Vinocola, who in himself, as you mentioned, is an unreal player, just a freak of nature almost. But I think the two that were up there for me, the talking points were Richards and Donald. Both special players who have produced some absolutely brilliant moments. Between them, I think Donald. One of his that sticks in my memory is that try in I think it was the 2008, I want to say, grand final, where he stood up Paul Wellens. He flew down the wing, stood up, squared up to Wellens and then beat the pace on the outside. And I don't really think we'd seen many players do that to such a great fullback like Wellens. So, but again, and I'll let you two decide this one. You two have outnumbered me anyway. No matter where I go, so I think we've got Richards in here. But there's been some really good wingers, and I think those two, Vinocola and Richards, are definitely worthy of the spots.
I completely agree, and we're going to move on to the centres now. And again, much like Vinocola, there was a name in our greatest 13 that would be impossible to leave out of this team, and that's Jamie Lyon. Again, if you want to see us talk about Jamie Lyon, feel free to go and watch the other video. Jamie Lyon was obviously one of the special players of Super League and obviously went back to the NRL and made appearances for Australia, so one of the greatest of all time. But there is another position that needs picking, and there's a few that we did mention in the greatest 13 that didn't make this team, and there's a few that we didn't mention that have come up that it's quite hard to leave them out as well. So I'll come over to you again, Jack. Who do you think should be at number 4?
Now, I'm not sure if he was mentioned in the greatest 13, but he's a player that I always loved watching, and I'll probably get some disagreement, I imagine, across the table from here. But for me, it's Matt Gidley. I think he's very similar to that sort of Lion mould in that he's this. He wasn't the most sort of physical centre. Let's say he wasn't one of those that just took the hard drives and stuff, but he had moments of magic about his play, and I think he was quite renowned for his flick pass. He just a little flick pass out the door, he'd draw the winger and find his winger on the outside to score some cracking tries for Saints. And Gidley was always one of those danger men that you knew was a try scoring himself, but was so capable of creating moments out of nothing. So I know one of the big arguments I'm probably going to get in a second is for Shontaine Harper, again another cracking centre, but I think for sheer quality and natural talent and skill, it's got to be Gidley for me.
Fair enough. What do you think? Response to that?
Well, to be honest, Jack was right. He's going to get a bit of bit of doubt for me. I would definitely go with Shontaine Harpy. I mean, we've got to recognise that Bradford team of the early 2000s, and he was, I think he was named in the Bradford team of the century as well. I mean, talk about a graceful centre. He went on to play for England at Union as well, so he's a dual code international, which is still some feat. And I mean, he's after Lyon, he'd definitely probably be the second best centre I've seen in Super League. So yeah, I would have to go for Shontaine Harpy.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. I think Gidley obviously was a great player. There's no doubt about that. But for me, not really hitting the same heights as some of the players that we've got on this list. I mean, you obviously mentioned Matt King earlier as well, and I would say the same thing about Matt King. I think he's obviously an awesome player. Not many people could beat Pat Richards in the air, and he did it on numerous occasions. You've got Twigger obviously from the 90s era, and he was obviously again a dual code international that was fantastic for Wigan. George Claremont was fantastic inside of Pat Richards, and obviously was a valuable part of why Pat Richards was so good. But for me, it's Shantae and Harpy. I think, as you said, you've got to give recognition to that Bradford team. I've mentioned it a few times on these podcasts. For me, that team is the greatest there's ever been in Super League. I don't think there would be any teams that are better than that.
I think that's probably a question for another day. But, I think
future podcast.
He's definitely made a big call with that one.
For me, my opinion, I think it is, and I think Harpy's the guy I'm going to go with. Given that obviously Paul agrees with me, I think he's the one that makes our team.
Yeah, I think to be fair, there's so many that we even haven't mentioned. I think centre for me was the real tough one to choose on. Out of this team, there's even some we haven't mentioned: Steve Renouf, Willie Tallow, Brad Godden, and Tony Carroll for Leeds, Sid Domick, Adam Mogg. They're the names I've got written down. There's so many great centres that have been overseas imports, but I think we've got a solid 2 there. As much as I probably don't agree with it.
Fair enough. We'll go on to the standoff, and over the years you've seen a lot of standoff scrum halves come over, and they're the guys that obviously, when you think about exports, you're going to think about these guys the most because they're the ones that affect the game the most, the ones that see the most ball. If they don't do well, as we've seen in the past with like Chris Sandow, if they don't do well, they're scrutinised heavily. But on the flip side, if they do well, they're adored by the clubs.
Club legends almost.
When they come. And there's a few standoffs that fit that bill very, very nicely. Trent Barrett, Henry Paul, Brett Finch, just to name Kurt Gidley, the other Gidley, just to name a few. Paul, I'll come over to you. Do you think, mate, it's number 6 for us?
Well, he played in Super League for 2 years. I think it was 2 years, Trent Barrett, but I mean, he's the best player I've ever seen in my lifetime playing rugby league. He made something happen every time he touched the ball. He was integral. I think we talked about the Bradford comeback. He was integral in the playoffs. He was integral in that game. I think he just excited everybody. I mean, how we didn't win Man of Steel, I think we'll probably never know. But it has to be it has to be Trent Barrett for me. I mean, Henry Paul was a tremendously skillful half, but I mean. It has to be Trent Barrett. 2 years is long enough in Super League to get in this team, and he definitely makes it.
I agree with that. Yeah, I can't really say much else. I mean, I think when Trent Barrett came over to England, I was only about 10 or 12 years old, so it's taken it back a fair few years. But he was one of the few Australian players I'd sort of heard of at that time. So to have Wigan signing this sort of big name Aussie that I'd heard of as a little lad, I remember when Leeds played Wigan, I was really excited to see Trent Barrett, which is quite rare. I think at that age, you're so sort of single-minded in that it's your club, you want to see your players. But Barrett was one of the first, I think, players from a different club that I was really excited about watching. And for the reasons you've mentioned there, I think I don't think we can really look.
It was a fairly average side as well, wasn't it? That he played, and obviously,
average.
And obviously, I think they got to the playoffs.
Yeah,
they got to I think from 6th, I think it was as well, wasn't it? They had to go to Bradford and win, and famous. I think they went to Holland.
And people forget, obviously, the game before the playoffs, they had to beat St Helens at home to make the playoffs, and they lost that game to make the playoffs. And Saints were top of the league, almost unbeatable, and then Trent Barrett was a massive influence in that game to go on and win. Obviously, finish 6th. Get the famous result of Bradford, went to beat Hull away, and then unfortunately it came to an end at Leeds. But obviously a massive run, and I do agree. Trent Barrett wasn't actually in my team, and I put that out there. Henry Paul made the team for me. I think he was obviously a massive influence. But I can't disagree with the fact that Trent Barrett was obviously such a massive part of that team. The same with Gidley for Warrington. Gidley was such a massive part when he came over to sort of reshape that Warrington team and send them into a new era. You can say the same about Brett Finch, obviously, when Wigan moved into the Michael Maguire era, they needed a big standoff, and Brett Finch came and did the job.
I think there's another one we haven't mentioned as well, which is maybe a bit of a controversial one, but Rangi Chase. I think a lot of he gets a lot of bad Man of Steel winner. He gets a lot of bad press, but
played for England though. That's the problem.
That is very true. But
he won Man of Steel as a Kiwi, didn't it? So that would be fair enough.
Again, magic player, cracking skill set, and perhaps not the best attitude or lifestyle off the field, but on the field, you can't doubt that he was a player that your team was scared to come up against.
Was it 2011 he won Man of Steel for Castleford? Was that? I think it was that
around
year,
that time.
Definitely. like I say, you think of him as English, but no, he was. I mean, it was just about then when he changed to become an England international. It was quite. There was a lot of controversy.
It was a couple of years after that, because obviously there was a lot of people talking about whether it should be. I remember going to an England game, and unbelievably, Danny Maguire was getting booed off because they wanted to see Rangi Chase play for England. It was like, who would have thought? It was a bizarre situation. But yeah, obviously it was fantastic in his when he first came into Super League, but all went a bit downhill for him. But you can't discredit him for that. He was a fantastic player in his own right. But I've been well and truly outvoted once again. So Trent Barrett will make. Not that I'm disappointed about that, because Trent Barrett was a fantastic player. He makes her number 6. Number 7's an interesting choice, because much like the centres, there's a few that maybe are at the same level, and you've got to sort of pick one that's maybe made the most impact over that time. I'm going to get my number 7 out of the way, because it's just massively biased, so I'm going to throw it out there straight away. It's my favourite player that's ever played the game is Adrian Lam. Right. Adrian Lam is obviously going to be my number 7. He was the guy that, when I first started watching rugby along with Anthony Minicello in Australia, they were the 2 players that I looked up to the most, and I really wanted to watch play rugby as much as I could. So Adrian Lam for me, obviously he was massive, and he was a massive influence to that early noughties Wigan team. Maybe it's just my bias, maybe he is that good, but I'm going to go with Adrian Lam.
Well, the guy I went for, I'm not sure, I mean, 6 or 7 really, but I've definitely put him at 7 in this team, obviously go along, but probably a talisman for the whole of the sport in the late 1990s. And again at Bradford, we have to Robbie Hunter-Paul, to be fair. I think he played the game exactly the way it should be. Even now, it's a massive figure in the game. Everything. I mean, what more can you say about him? His style is great. The way he ran into the line, he could pass it left and right, no problems. I'd have to Robbie Hunter-Paul for me.
I can't really comment much on Lam, because I haven't seen much of him play. He was just slightly before my time by a couple of years. There's no doubting his stature in the game and stuff like that. But for me, again, Robbie Hunter-Paul. From videos I've seen of him, and I think he was still just about playing when I really started to get into rugby. He was a bit of like I said, talismanic figure, and a bit of a pioneer in sort of this modern, agile halfback. That again, he moved from full back to halfback. I think he sort of, I guess, set that trend going. We see the likes of Johnny Lomax, among others, now doing that. But yeah, he was one of the first, and I remember just watching he was such a graceful player, and his sidestep and agility was just second to none, and superb to watch. I think it's also worth mentioning as well, though. I think probably one of the best halves ever to play in the world. He only played 5 Super League games, but Andrew Johns, of course. I don't think you can class him as Super League's best ever scrum half, because of those were the days where Super League clubs could loan Aussie players in for the back end of the seat for like 5-6 games, which I think was brilliant at the time. But I think I went to his debut game was against Leeds at the Halliwell Jones, and he tore us to pieces. I think I don't know if he scored a try, but he definitely got a drop goal, and the hype was there all evening. You could just tell he was going to have a great game, and unfortunately as a Leeds fan he did. So
he's one of those figures that it'd be rude not to mention him, obviously. It's impossible to put him into the team because of the way that we're trying to, obviously it's a Super League team.
Exactly, we want the best players in Super League, not just the best players to have played.
But obviously it'd be rude not to mention. Another one's Michael Dobson for me, obviously. He was a massive part of the Wigan team that stayed up. Without him, you could argue that Wigan really would have struggled.
Well, even when he was at Catalans and Hull KR, he was
his time at Hull
brilliant
KR
player.
Was fantastic.
He was superb. I always liked Michael Dobson.
So Michael Dobson's another one that, and again a Wigan player, Thomas Lillywhite, maybe obviously more renowned for his time at number 9. But played in that Trent Barrett. I call it the Trent Barrett team. Playing that Trent Barrett team next to Trent Barrett, and obviously had to do a job, otherwise Trent Barrett doesn't get the space that he gets given.
Well, even when he was at London as well, back in sort of the his early days in England, he was one of their standout players without a doubt, and I think he was sort of one of the first players to, as a Kiwi, come over to England still when he was quite young, and build his way up through the English ranks and end up playing for his country. Not many players have done that.
And obviously, we've had a lot of great number 9s ever, and Thomas Lulawai is actually in that now.
He's in that
despite
as well.
staying as a centre.
We could mention him in a couple.
But going back to, I think it was the 2008 World Cup, was it? He won when New Zealand won. He played as a 9 for New Zealand when they won it. While he was obviously playing in the house for Wigan. So I mean, again, I think. Probably the sport, but definitely the Wigan club. I mean, obviously Thomas Lulawai is a legend.
Yeah.
But,
tremendous versatility.
I think Robbie Hunter-Paul is probably the smart the choice out of those. I think for me it's down between Hunter-Paul and Lamb. I'm just being biased. I'll take that on the chin because Adrian Lamb for me is one of those great figures. We'll move into the front row. I mean, 1 to 7. That's a fantastic 1 to 7. You got Brent Webb, Pat Richards, Leslie Vanacore, Jamie Lyon, Shantae Harpy, Trent Barrett, Robbie Hunter-Paul. 1 to 7. Looks alright, doesn't it? So we'll move into the forwards.
it would be a decent team, to be fair. Yeah.
Move into the forwards and see what we can pull out of these. So at 8-10, you've got some of the big and I mean big names, both physically and metaphorically, massive names. This is where the French argument will come into play because I have Remy Castille written down. Now I understand that Remy Castille plays for a French team in a European Super League. However, what I would say is that he is still not an English player. He's not a UK based player.
He's not, but I think we are talking more about your Australians, your New Zealanders, your Polynesian players.
However,
I think he definitely, if we are going to mention any French player, he's the one we mention. He's been a superb servant for his club. Had a little spell with Sydney Roosters in Australia. And held his own there, but he's a cracking player, and trust me, I would love to include him. But I think if we are looking at the criteria,
made the Super League Dream Team twice,
exactly.
And they're about 7 years apart, 6-7 years apart, which is
there's another caveat there, though, that obviously pre-2005 we would be able to include French players in the team, so that's probably a bit harsh on Castille. He hasn't actually made my team, but obviously, he one of the names that we have to mention. But it is a tough one, the French question.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, we'll ignore French players. I'm happy to ignore them, given that it is a European Super League.
He's got to mention.
But he has got to mention. I think it's important he gets a mention because he obviously didn't get a mention in the Old Town, but he is one of the top players, both for France and for Catalan, and of all time. So we have to actually find props, and I'm going to come to you, Jack, because obviously there is one name that was synonymous, maybe the forgotten man of the trio as well.
I'd agree without a doubt. Kylie Lulawai is obviously the man you're referring to, and. So again, superb servant to Leeds. Like I said, the forgotten man, I'd say. He was so sort of overshadowed by the likes of Simfield, Peacock, Maguire, Burrow, etc. I think, he retired in the same year as Peacock, and that was also when Simfield went to Union. But yeah, without a doubt, he was probably just as big a part of that squad as the other two were. I think it's worth saying as well, I think he spent a good chunk of that last season as well. With heart problems, he wasn't able to do the full minutes that he had done. He was never a 80-minute player by a long stretch, but he's one of those that you knew would do a job when he was on.
Yeah.
He was a hard runner and a hard tackler, just one of the big hard men of Super League, and I loved watching him play. I remember when we signed him, he was sort of a bit of an unknown entity, sort of thing. Not many people knew what he was about. He'd played a lot for Manly, but he'd not, again, set the world alight. He's one of those that had done a lot of the behind the scenes work sort of thing that doesn't get mentioned as much, and I think it was similar for Leeds. He was just a very solid player that you could rely on to do a job and be trustworthy. So Kylie Lulawai is definitely the first name, and I think we've got a few debates about the others. I've personally gone for Apollo Perellini, who again I can't say I saw much of, similar to Lamb. But through word of mouth, I've just heard that he was fairly similar to Lulawai, and he was just this big Polynesian prop that teams would fear.
Yeah.
Teams would fear coming up against. He's one of those you would not want to find yourself on a rugby pitch in front of him when he was steaming towards you. So he's the other choice that I've gone for.
Fair enough. I think on the Kylie Lulawai, I think Lulawai, as you said, it was a weird one because I went to the testimonial game between Leeds and New Zealand. Obviously New Zealand were warming up for a test series against England, and Kylie Lulawai just retired, so they got all these. TC came back and played as well.
There was another one. Yeah.
So and it was a fantastic occasion, and it was good that he had that for me, because I think out of the three of them, you obviously look at Jamie Peacock and Kevin Sinfield. They're always mentioned, because obviously they're not just Leeds legends, they're England legends.
Yeah,
They're always mentioned. Whereas Kyle Lewis is maybe one of those forgotten men, because he didn't hit the heights of the international game given that he wasn't afforded the same opportunities. But obviously one of the great props of Super League, and rightly mentioned in this team. You mentioned him hit hard. It's like Aluluai hitting hard. Imagine that. Runs in the family. The other prop, however, I'm a bit stuck as well, to be honest. You mentioned Perolini. I think that's a good shout. I think Jeff Lehman made a massive impact at Wigan. Ifeta Palliasina.
I was going to mention Palliasina. I think he was again just a hard hitter. I remember he just had this bizarre mix of bulk, strength, but pace. He was one of no fear. I think some of the best props you'll get are the ones that are just fearless and will literally take a carry, run straight at maybe even the biggest man at full pelt, and just let the contact happen. And the amount of times that you would sit there, I imagine, especially for you when you were watching him at Wigan, where you'd sit in the stands and you'd be able to hear every hit that he took was, it's those sort of moments that you enjoy in rugby league, and there weren't many better, I don't think, for taking those balls in than Palliasina.
I have a problem with Palliasina. I don't get that. As a Wigan fan, I love him. I love the person on and off the field. I mean, he's an absolute credit to the sport. But I mean, he would do 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there.
But what? They're exciting. I
agree with that. But the Wigan fans used to go mad when he went on. Maybe as he went on for Fielding, the fans would go berserk. But hang on, it's Fielding that's doing all the work here, and you're cheering this guy. I mean.
But it was a cult hero though, and everyone was a cult hero at every club. Luluai was similar at Leeds because, like you mentioned, he wasn't a Sinfield, a Peacock, but he was a cracking player. And I think he was similar minutes to Palliasina and just a hard hitter. And everyone loves a cult hitter. And
I went as mad as everybody else. But then you think, well, hang on a sec. I mean, Fielding's the real star here. And
no better moment in my memory than when obviously cult hero Palliasina crashes over away at the last of the game at Knowsley Road. Crashes over, wins us the game. I was like,
exactly.
As a Wigan fan, you've got to love those moments. He did fantastic for Hull as well.
Let's
not forget that.
He's a legend there. He's a legend there.
And Doncaster. He was at Doncaster. We're not forgetting Doncaster. We've got to get them.
I've actually got another one to the list here. I think I'm probably going to chuck this one from left field, but again, I'm going back to this Bradford team, who you would say were the best Super League team ever. Joe Wagner.
Very true, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the guy's a beast. I mean, to be fair, it was part of I think there were Bradford had the four unbelievable props at the time, interchanging with Brian Noble as coach. And, I mean, he's smashing into the line. Obviously they all hit well. That's why they're in our team. Yeah. I mean, he's the first person you throw the ball to run it in from the kick-off. He played for New Zealand. I think he played for Samoa as well. He played for the Warriors in the NR. He played for the Auckland Warriors at the time. But I mean, the blokes. I would keep. These guys are all. I keep saying legends. I've probably said it about 10 times now. They're all legends, aren't they? But to be fair, I think. He'd have to go in with Lilo for me, definitely. I mean, just go.
Sure, it's all on you. We've got Lulu.
I think Luluai's in the team. It's the Perolini, and if you put in Wangener, I had Remy Casti, so I'm gonna have to make a choice.
Well, while you're thinking, I think we can probably mention a couple of others that we've not sort of brought up. Paul Rahehe at Warrington was a bit of a different one, but. Again, he was one that I'd heard of from New Zealand. Sorry, when I was a young lad, and I always thought again a bit of a cult hero. And Danny Nutley from Castleford, who's one that's a bit that I think again another one of the forgotten men. But I remember in that Castleford side of I can't even remember the year, to be honest. It was a fair while ago, but he was again one of their standouts, and he was a proper fan favourite at Castle, Danny Nutley. He's a different one that probably not many people would think of, but I enjoyed watching.
Rugby league props is such a fantastic position. There's so much. I mean, you think it's a forward rolling, a front rolling, but you think look to the other code. It's pretty much they're just there in the scrum.
Yeah,
but
these
guys, you hear one of these big guys coming from Australia or New Zealand. It's like signing one of these top halves. It fills you with so much excitement watching them play, smashing into each other. I mean, they're the true. I mean, what I've always said, forwards are the true stars of our games, but get all the glory. But it doesn't matter how good you are. Blake Austin was playing for Wigan now, put behind our pack. He wouldn't be anywhere near Man of Steel.
Yeah.
But they are the true stars, the front row in Super League. There's no doubt about it for me.
Right, Sean, have you
made a decision? I have made a decision, but I want to throw another curveball out there. I'm not going to put this in the team, obviously, but just because we've mentioned a lot of Australian internationals, New Zealand internationals, Samoan internationals, let's mention an American international. Eddie Pettenborn, when he came over and played for Wigan. Fantastic player, I think.
You must be having a laugh, right? Just get this right. If you chose, and let's push over.
I think
edit that out.
He did do well in the World Cup, didn't he? To be fair,
I think I
think we're properly scraping the barrel.
He did very well. He led the American team to a quarter final. It's legendary.
I think the viewers watching are going to think, if you missed him, and you mentioned Eddie Pettenborn.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's just for the American more than anything. Just throw another nation on.
Anyway, get a move on. Go on.
I think for the iconic, obviously, commentator saying Vangana, we'll go with Joe Vangana.
Yeah, alright.
I
can probably accept that. Like I said, I went Perolini, but Vangana's a very worthy choice.
He's a true cracking legend.
Let's move to the hooking position, number 9. And this is actually hard for the opposite reason, that there's only one or two, but they're all quite the same.
Very good players. I said both because I think there is only, maybe 3.
I think this. I hadn't considered him at first, but I do think there's a third choice that probably doesn't make it, but he's very, very close. First and foremost, let's mention some of the people that probably won't make the team. The likes of Matt Purcell, who people forget, was obviously in
very good
first year, dream team. Yeah. Very, very important to Leeds.
Mark
Riddell at Wigan.
Yeah.
People forget. Lied about his age.
Lied about his age. He also had the ridiculous kicking style, but
a fantastic player. And obviously, you could argue was one of the reasons that Michael McIlroy developed so well into the player that he became. There's Danny Badiris at Leeds, who was one of the players that's in serious contention.
He'd be my pick. I remember the big buzz and the hype that he had when he came over. I remember they had meet and greets with the whole team before the season started, and you'd usually get people flocking to Sinfield and Maguire's for pictures and autographs, but everyone was flocking to Badiris. He was this Aussie international New South Wales representative that had come over, possibly in the twilight of his career, but the way he sort of settled that pack and orchestrated attacks and stuff was something that we'd perhaps not seen in that sort of sense before. Leeds had Diskin, and up until that point, Diskin was probably like the man that you'd think as the Leeds hooker. But then Badiris came in and he just had a completely different style. He was much more dynamic, I think. He wasn't so quick out of dummy half, maybe as Diskin was, but the way he sort of controlled the team and sort of, I think, took pressure off the likes of Maguire and Burrow in those attacking roles. You know, he took some of that responsibility on himself and really sort of added this sort of settled head and calmness in the Leeds pack, which is, you know, something that I really enjoyed watching. And for me, Badiris is just a legend of the game, full stop, and a legend of Super League and at Leeds.
So is that your pick as well?
No. I agree with everything. I agree with 99% of what Jack just said there. I mean, fabulous. I mean, true star. But I think I kind of mentioned this in the all-time team. For me, one of the best things the last 10 years have been the rise of Warrington as a club to watch. And I think if we go back to 2011, I think we talk about the best Super League teams. I think for all they didn't win the grand final, so you have to question the ball or whatever you want to call it, that they got beat by Leeds in that massive game, and we've all been there, beaten by Leeds after a tremendous season. But I think probably the talisman of that whole team and the whole club, as we're coming up from a team that were in the bottom half of Super League to the team that were going to be challenging for honours, was Michael Monaghan. I mean, he come with his brother came to Super League as well, but it's probably the most important position on the pitch in the number 9. Obviously, they get most of the ball at every play of the ball. They've got to see left and right whether to go and get another 5 or 10 yards forward or to move the ball wide, try and get the wingers in the corner. But I mean, he had everything. He smashed into the line. He was a heavy tackler and a tremendous ball player. So for me, I would probably go with Michael Monaghan.
Okay, right. I agree. I think when I was doing this research, I didn't really think about this guy, despite the fact that he plays for Wigan every week. But Thomas Leatherwhite, maybe, obviously we've already mentioned him, maybe we don't think about him as a 9 because most of his Wigan career was at 7. But in that period where he went back to New Zealand Warriors and played for New Zealand internationally, was probably considered the best number 9 in the world for a stint, which obviously it means it's worth a mention. He has played for Wigan at 9 for a season or two, but...
As a Super League 9, though, that's the thing.
Yeah, he's Super League 9, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's playing there this season, bits and bobs, and for me, he should play there anyway because he's one of the best that's ever played the position. But I think I have to go for Michael Monaghan as well. I think just the Monaghans in general obviously developed Warrington so much.
Yeah.
Joe was one of, we didn't mention him, unbelievably we didn't mention him, but Joe Monaghan was obviously one of the best wingers in the league as well.
He was. His area of presence was
tremendous.
And centre, he played both. And
I think Joel going off in 2013 was a massive factor in Wigan winning that grand final.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean.
I agree. Michael Monaghan is my pick.
Super League needed another club to come into the mix. We had the Bradford, Leeds, Wigan, and Saints. So we needed somebody else to come in, and obviously Warrington did. And it was so good for the game. I mean, they haven't won the grand final yet. I think they'll probably have a real chance this year. But I think he was the main part of that.
Yeah. So it's an intimidating front line of Kyle Lulawai, Michael Monaghan, and Joe Vangana. Let's get to the back row. Again, another Leeds man for me to start us off. I think Ali Lalatiti is one of the standout forwards in Super League. We got a big mention in the Greatest 13, but
I think I picked him. I thought we got him in, but no, we didn't. You're right, we didn't get him in.
But he definitely gets in this team for me. Yeah. The other one for me is Steve Menzies. I think I'm going to go with Steve Menzies, and I think he was outstanding for Catalans. Obviously, coming to the twilight of his career, but was still unplayable at times. You remember pictures of a 30-plus-year-old Steve Menzies breaking a line and trying to run 80 metres.
Well, you mentioned that. I remember, I think one of the iconic moments for him in Super League I saw was when he was at Catalans. I can't remember quite who he was against, but one of the wingers for the opposite team had broken down the right, and he was the man tracking back. I think he tracked him all the way to the corner and tackled him in a touch about 5 minutes from the line. You just thought, that bloke's 36, 37. Yeah. You know, I would love to be in the peak of physical fitness at that age, you know, being his condition. But Menzies was just a freak of nature. Yeah. You know, he really was. To be able to be performing consistently in the way that he did, and he sort of combined all the elements of strength and speed and the technical parts of his game as well, the vision and the handling skills. Yeah. You know, at that age and still performing in that Catalans team is amazing. And
I think it was salary cap issues why he left Bradford, wasn't it? But it's a shame. Obviously now with the marquee, that probably would have made it stay there. But I think probably the biggest name player that's ever come over. You think of what is standing in the NRL, and I think everyone thought he was coming for a pay, didn't actually come at the latter end of his career. Yeah. But I think his reasonings for leaving Manly said so much about him as a person. I think it was said at the time that he wouldn't play against him in the NRL, so his only option was to come to Super League. I think that speaks volumes for the man. I think it's one of them. You can, someone like Barrett as well is where. It's a pleasure to have seen him play. Yeah. I mean, he was in my team. Obviously, the same for Lauatiti. I think I'd picked Lauatiti for if I got overruled, as you were sure. But so it would be them two for me.
I again, as a Leeds fan, watching Lauatiti was just superb. As a kid, watching a player like that with the skills he had. I remember his big one hand carry. He'd be ball all over the place looking for an offload, and just this big, blistering back rower that I think he scored a try in one of the grand finals. I can't remember which year it was, but he literally, I think, got the ball on the 20-30 metre line and sort of dummied his way and fended his way to the corner and managed to get over. And it's moments like that you love. I think another mention though goes to a player that I think is quite similar in David Solomona. From Bradford, who again is a player that you hated to play against. The amount of times that that Bradford would have a player play the ball on the line,
it's got a hat-trick in that Wigan game, isn't it?
Literally, if Solomona was a dummy half at that point, you knew exactly what was happening. But even though teams knew what was happening, they could never stop it. You know, he was just such a strong bloke.
Oh yeah.
I think he was one of the ones
but so strong and skillful. It was
I think the one that
ridiculous.
Steve McMara took off, wasn't he? I think Steve, because they were so
It
far
took
up.
him, Terry Newton.
Yeah. I think did they not make the playoffs at Wakefield as well?
Yeah, did.
At least
did,
one
I think,
year.
yeah.
Running.
Did really well at Wakefield.
Yeah. Like I say, his offloads.
Yeah.
Even later on in his career, when his fitness wasn't what it was, he was still a massive threat.
Those two were just that was their trade.
Would we say probably the best offloader the Super League's had, or?
So definitely up there. Definitely up there.
I can't think of anyone better. Obviously, Cuthbert, somebody come to Leeds,
Yeah. I think the three were the three
Yeah.
that come to mind if we talked about offloads are probably Cuthbert's and Lauertiti and Solomon. I think Cuthbert's the one we didn't even mention for props, but he had a cracking impact in his first year.
Did he make the dream team, or he must have been close
He
to
did,
it?
but he didn't make it at prop.
He made it at least four.
That's right, he did playing that, because...
So again, we'll mention him in a second.
Yeah.
But there are a few second rows that we haven't mentioned. Solomon was one of those guys that I was petrified of playing against, purely because of that hat-trick at the Bradford game.
Yeah.
I was like, every time he played, he seemed to score 2 or 3 against us. Dave Ferner, obviously, as I mentioned, the ex-Leeds coach and ex-Leeds back row.
Yeah.
Brett Delaney, one currently playing Zeb Taylor, who I really like.
I think Taylor's always been one of those underrated players.
I think
he really
you give him another couple of years in Super League, he makes this team, because I think the fact he's still playing probably hinders him somewhat.
Can I be a bit biased as well and mention another Wigan player? He was only there a year, I think, but probably one of the most skillful second rows I've ever seen is Ryan Hoffman.
Yeah,
100%. Very true.
I think there was problems at Melbourne. That's why they come over. I think
the salary cap
yeah,
issue.
I think there was 3 come over, wasn't there? Because Lima was one of them as well. And I think Wigan won the Cup 2011 the year that I was here. It's just you could just the first time you saw him play, you could just see his quality. The way he could read the game as a second row, he was very, very good in the air as well. But as Jack on Lauerti, I can't remember ever being glad to see him play against Wigan. I must admit, I was terrified every time he touched the ball.
I think another couple of players as well. I think as we've established, I'm not very good with years, as we've probably seen in this video. But there was a year, I think it might have been, I want to say 2012 maybe, that Hull KR had in the dream team both second row positions, and that was Clint Newton and Ben Galea. You know, two Aussies that came over, again, that were, you know, just sort of known as fairly decent squad players over there, but came over and had such an impact. Yeah. And watching, I mean, Clint Newton was a try machine. Yeah. Despite being a second row, he was an absolute try machine. Yeah. And similarly, on the other side, Galea had superb handling. Yeah. Created so many chances for the wide men outside him, and I think those two definitely deserve mention.
that Hull KR team was one of the best Hull KR teams we've seen, and that's probably why, and it was probably down to that back row.
Those two were definitely a big part of that.
Ryan Hoffman, Jeff Lima, Brett Finch all came over together. They were a massive
Melbourne trio. Yeah.
And Ryan Hoffman for me is probably the best back row I've ever seen live. But obviously didn't stay around.
It's just we've got to pick on impact in Super League.
Yeah. And so we'll move on to loose forward, and we've already mentioned one in Adam Cupper, probably one of the best offloaders in the game, and he did win his place in the dream team at loose forward, so he is a viable contender for this position. Yeah. Other people, Sika Manu, maybe you consider him a back rower more than
I'd probably consider him a back row.
It's a dying position now, isn't it? I think teams are preferring they've been mentioning Cuthbertson, haven't we? Teams are preferring the 3 props. I went for Adrian Vowles in my team I think he was man of steel in the late 1990s at Castleford. There was a game that the guy was a legend. The NRL before he came over.
I also went for Adrian Vowles. I think Jason Smith would have been close.
I think Jason Smith's close. I think another one as well, Jason Demetriou. At work. I always liked Demetriou, watching him, and I think his leadership at Wakefield was class.
He played in a few positions with Demetriou.
He did, centre.
That was his. I think that was his position.
Loose forward was his natural.
It's a tremendous position on the field. It's a shame that I think in a way it's a shame clubs are going that way. But I mean the game moves on, I suppose. But I went for Vowles. I must say.
Well, there it is. I'm assuming you're agreeing with Vowles.
To be fair, I went for Smith. But again, I can. I think those two again were very close. I've not seen too much of either player, being a younger lad. Yeah. But Hull fans just seem to rave about Jason Smith, and some of them class him as one of if not the best player I've ever seen in a Hull shirt. Yeah. So I think Jason Smith is the one that I went for, but Vowles again is a viable choice. I think a man that I meant to mention a minute ago in the second row was Glenn Morrison of Bradford and Wakefield. Wakefield and Bradford. Another born leader. I think when he was at both clubs, he led the squad around the park from the forward pack, and I think he was always a very underrated player. I don't think he ever got much of the.
Went to the championship coaching.
I think he's part of the Jamaica coaching.
Is that where he is now?
I think he is now, but he was coaching Dewsbury.
Just because we're running out of time, one word answer from you both. Who captains this team?
Who captains this team?
Who captains this team?
I would say Menzies.
I'm going for Trent Barrett.
I would go for Menzies.
For Menzies.
Yeah,
Alright.
I think
so
Menzies is
we're going to go. 13 is Brent Webb, Pat Richards, Leslie Vanacore, Jamie Lyon, Shantae Harpy, Trent Barrett, Robbie Hunter-Paul, Kylie Luluai, Michael Monaghan, Joe Vangener, Ali Latiti. The captain is Steve Menzies, and Adrian Vowles is at loose forward. That is our Overseas team. 13. We want to let you guys have a go. Please comment year 1 to 13. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell to get all the latest news on our videos. And we'll see you next time.